Hey everyone, you're here sewing with Cody, and this is part 2 of the BERNINA 770 Quilters Edition Plus Sewing and Embroidery Machine Overview. So in the first video, we went over, really kind of dived in and saw what the machine user interface is capable of for this new BERNINA 770 Plus, and it was strictly just sewing. This video is going to be strictly on the embroidery side of the machine. So as you can see, we have the embroidery module plugged up, and this is the new Smart Drive technology module, and we'll have a separate video going over this module, but this module is available for the 770 Plus machine, but you still probably can get the regular module and potentially for a discounted price depending on your dealer. So just like with the first video, remember, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, check the link below to check out the merchant shop, and remember, the proceeds from those items sold on the shop go towards helping this channel and bringing more videos like this to you and everyone else. All right, so let's dive in. So with this machine, as remember, we've got this beautiful 7-inch centrally located touchscreen, and so when you turn on your machine, if you have the embroidery module attached to the machine is automatically going to come up on the embroidery side. So if the feed dogs are up, which is the lever on the right hand side of the machine, if the feed dogs are up, it's going to prompt you to lower the feed dogs. If the feed dogs are already down, it's going to come up looking just like what you see on the screen here when you turn on the machine. So here, this is our home screen. So here are our alphabets that are built into the machine. And with this machine, you have 8 different alphabets, or 8 different fonts. The 790 does have 18 different fonts. So when we click here, we can see the different alphabet fonts that are built into the machine. But of course, if you have different BERNINA software, you've got just about an infinite amount of fonts for your embroidery. The second folder, this contains all of your built-in embroidery designs. This one does have quite a few designs at 275 built-in embroidery designs. You've got some built-in quilting designs, built-in piecing designs, like piecing in the hoop designs. You've got some applique, you've got children's. You've got all different types of designs, and what you see are the different folders that then contain multiple designs on the machine. And the third folder, this is your personalized or your personal designs that you've saved on the machine. So if you brought a design from a USB stick and saved it on the machine, that's where it's going to be. If you sent designs over from your V9 software over to the machine, that's where it's going to be. If you took a design that's built in, you altered it, and you saved it, you have the option to save it in here or to save it on your USB flash drive. And if you do have a USB stick, say if you have a USB flash drive, you plug it into the right side of your machine, you'll see the little port, and then here is where you can pull up those designs that are built into, that are on your USB stick, USB flash drive. Otherwise, the designs that are on the machine, like what you see here, are going to be located here where we are now. So if we want to come here, and let's select a design. Looks like a little piece of rosemary, very pretty. So whenever you pull up a design, either be off a USB stick or off the machine, this is the screen that you're going to come to. And so it's automatically going to select the hoop that best fits that design. And in this case, it's the medium hoop. So we can come here and we can see the different hoop sizes for this machine. You've got a number of different hoops. So if you buy the 770 with the embroidery module, or if you buy it later, it doesn't matter, the module itself. The module comes with a small hoop, a medium hoop, and a oval hoop, what they refer to as a large oval. So I'm going to get sidetracked for a second, and if you look at your hoops here, you notice all these numbers. These are numbers in millimeters. So like the large oval hoop is 145 millimeters by 255 millimeters. So most people in the United States have no idea what those numbers as for a size relation. So the machine, you are able to change all of that into inches. So we're going to go and do that now. I do have a separate video showing that. And it's the same for every machine that embroiders on the BERNINA line. But let's go to our gears, which we saw on the sewing side. So we can go to little cogs here and go to the embroidery settings. And then see where the little measuring tape is. You'll click that. And then here it's reading in millimeters. Now you want to read it in inches. So you can exit out of here. And now we should see our hoops in the correct, or in American units, our non-metric units. So like the large oval hoop is a 5.7 by 10 inches. The largest hoop that can fit this machine is the maxi hoop at 8.3 inches by 15.7 inches. It's a pretty big hoop. But like I mentioned, the hoop that it shows here is the medium hoop, and this is a hoop that it's recommending for that design in its current position and its current size. You can always put in a bigger hoop for sure. You put it in a smaller hoop if you make the design smaller, but typically you're rarely ever using a hoop the hoop smaller than this medium hoop. So on the sides, we see something that looks very similar. We've got our tension, which you really don't have to adjust at all. Your needles, which again, you're not really going to be really embroidering with twin needles, but you can, and you can tell it. But it is going to recommend that you use a 0 millimeter stitch plate. The next thing here is our foot selection. So the machine will not stitch until you tell it that you're working with one of the embroidery feet. So we'll come here, and that's what the little caution sign is. We see it here and here. So here is recommended the 26. That's what comes with it. So you can tell it the 26. And if you notice, that little caution symbol goes away. We can see the same thing here. So this is telling us that our feed dogs are still up. So we do need to lower those feed dogs. When we lower those feed dogs, we see they turn yellow and they drop, and that little caution sign goes away as well. And like I mentioned, it does recommend that you use a 0 millimeter stitch plate. It's not the end of the world if you don't, but it is recommended. And so over here we can see, so currently with the way things are set up, it's going to take about 10 minutes to stitch out this design. A number of things can change that. Clearly, this little dial here on the next screen will adjust that. The hoop size can change the speed and a number of other little factors, but that's an estimated time, so about 10 minutes. And then the size of our design. Because we changed it to read in inches, now it's showing you in inches instead of millimeters, and this one's 3.4 by 3 inches. And then on the side here, well, yeah. So here, there's not much on the screen at this point to edit the design. So it's just like the sewing side. Remember, to get some more information, some more editing function, it's going to be in the little lowercase letter I icon. So we click that, and here are all of our options. So by default, our knobs will move the design right to left, up, and down. So the stitch width is left to right, stitch length is up and down. Now if we go into one of these functions here, so like this one's rotate. So now these knobs are going to rotate the design. They're not going to move it up and down or side to side. They will rotate. And if you look on the screen, you see this little icon here. It's a picture of a hand and two little dots. The picture of the hand is representing your hand, and these two little dots represent these multifunctional knobs. So right now they're both white, which means both of these will do the same exact function. So if we were to, say, go down to this one here, this is where we can change the size of our design. So if we click on that here, we notice we have two icons which represent the ability to change our size. But there's a little chain in the center, and that little chain is white. There's a white line around it when it is selected. So that means both of these are locked. So it doesn't matter if you use this knob or this knob, the design is going to change size proportionally. But if you wanted to just make it taller or just make it wider, we're going to deselect this icon here, the little chain, and the little white line around it goes away. And so now we can see this icon, only the top white dot selected, and this one only the bottom white dot selected. So that means this is only going to change when we're working with this knob. So we can make it wider or make it narrower. And same thing here, this will make it taller or shorter. One thing to remember, if you hit the clear button, it will clear everything back to default. However, it will not reselect that function. You have to select it. And that is basically, it will change your design size proportionally. So next screen is our pinpoint placement. This is something we will see it wants a hoop. So this message, good message, this message is telling us that it's going to start moving. So make sure there's nothing in the way. So you hit the check mark. The module is moving. And now it's prompting you to put a hoop on. So we've got our hoop selected. And now it's telling us it's going to move again. So you don't want anything in the way. So if you noticed, now it's showing a much bigger hoop. So originally it said the medium hoop. Well, I put on the MIDI hoop. And so now it changed it on the screen. So it says MIDI, it's showing you the MIDI parameters. So here is our pinpoint placement. So I have separate videos on pinpoint placement, which I will link so you can go and check out how the pinpoint placement works. But this is pinpoint placement. So in a nutshell, what it does is it allows, so when you hoop your fabric, if you hoop it crooked, no big deal. In here, you are able to select 2 points, and you're basically able to make your design really easy, really quickly. Make your design as crooked as your fabric is hooped. Plain and simple. Take that off there. So the other two here, these are mirror image. We saw these same icons on the sewing side. So here we can do a vertical mirror image or a horizontal mirror image. Or we can select them again or deselect them basically to set it back to default. This one's really neat. This is our copy. So let's say if you made this design a little bit smaller or a little bit larger, you rotate it, you may have changed the color. You can make an exact replica of that design. So you don't have to go, if you needed 2 of them, or if you want to put 1 on each side of a name or something like that, you don't have to then pull up a whole nother design, another one, and then make those same changes. The machine, you're able to make a copy of what you've already made. And to say if you want to delete that design, you can easily, you have it selected. We can see it on our tile here, and we hit the little trash can. Now ask, are you sure you want to delete it? Yes. So the other icons we see here are our check. So this check is going to require the hoop. Again, some functions require the hoop attached in order for you to do them, which makes perfect sense because it has to move the hoop to show you where things are. So this check is going to show you the top left, top right, and bottom left, and the center. So it gives you and shows you the parameters of that design. However, we rarely use this check function this way anymore because the machines have and have had for a very long time absolute check. Absolute check is a fantastic way to really see where your design is going to be. So in that check, it just boxed out that design. So it was way up here in the corner, but there was no actual design here or here. So if you want to get an exact idea of which or where is each little piece, or if you're trying to wrap a design around a print on a fabric or something that's already been embroidered, it's hard to do that with that check function. But what I can do, I could zoom in, and I can click anywhere on the design. You'll see my little cursor move to that location, and the hoop and everything moved. So right now, where that needle and where that foot is in relation to the hoop, it's showing you that's where that part of the design would stitch out if you were to stitch out in this location. Same thing with over here. Wherever you move, that's where that is going to show you. So it's basically plotting and showing you where each little piece of that design is going to be when it stitches out. So this is a much better way of showing you a good relation in the size and where a design is going to be, opposed to the check function. But the check function is nice because it gives you a general idea of where everything's going to be. So the next button we see here is one of the new ones, just like the pinpoint placement. This is our group and ungroup. This is another function that we really only saw on our 590, our 790 and our 880 machines. But now the 770 Plus has it. So here our group and ungroup is a wonderful, wonderful feature. So what we're able to do here is if we look at this and we see these little flowers or we see certain parts of a design and we don't want that there, we want to eliminate it, we're able to ungroup it, and what it does is it breaks up all the different colors and we're able to scroll through like these little flowers and we're able to delete them. We're able to take bits and pieces of certain designs and take them out. So we're able to really, really edit these designs without having to open up software. So we can just kind of just take different parts of the design and delete them. And then we're able to also then group other aspects of this design or another design together and treat it as one design, because you're able to ungroup it, which is what we did, and then you're able to go back and say, okay, I want to regroup everything back together, and it brings it all back to one single design. So another thing that we see is this icon here. This is our pattern rearrange, essentially. So if we have multiple designs, which we don't, we only have one design because we can see it here. If we had multiple designs, they are going to stitch out in the order in which we brought those designs in. But that order may not necessarily be the order in which we really want them to stitch out. We may have brought in 3 different designs and we're messing with them, playing with them, and we may have wanted the first design that we brought in to actually overlap the third design, but it's not. All the other designs are going to overlap it because it was brought in first. So let's go and add a couple more designs so you can really see and understand what I'm talking about. So another icon we see is this little plus sign. This is how we add designs to what we have on the screen. So I can hit the plus and I can come, we'll choose a font. We'll choose something, just an ABC. And let's go and select just something else. Okay, so one thing I want you to notice is whenever, and this is the case with all of our machines, whenever we bring in a new design, it's going to place that design in the center of the hoop. So we brought in an ABC and we brought in a little B. So these designs are directly on top of each other. So what we can do, and what's neat, is now you see these little tiles on the side. Those little tiles represent each individual design, and they all have little numbers, and those numbers also represent the stitch order. So first the little sprig of rosemary will stitch out first, then the ABC, and then the little bumblebee. So let's move these designs around. You can move them around with your finger, or you can select the design and you can move them around with your multifunctional knobs. You've got options. So one thing, as you can see, as we have each one individually selected, like the ABC, that's the one that's going to be in the color. The other one's going to be grayed out in the background, so you can really know which ones you're working with. So to select a specific design, you can either tap. The easiest way, to be perfectly honest, and the safest way, is to tap the design on the tile. But you can tap on the screen. The only downside is be careful when you do tap on the screen, because you do have the ability to accidentally move the design, because you may accidentally slide it. But so we've got 1, 2, and 3, and then you have this very last tile, and it has no number. That is essentially our select all. So we can see everything selected. So if you look, you can see that that ABC is overlapping the little sprig of rosemary. And if I took this B, take this off. If I took this B and put it over the rosemary here, you'll see that B is on top of the rosemary and so is the ABC, because the order in which we brought them in is the order in which they're going to stitch out. So the B is going to stitch out last, so it's going to be on top of everything. But let's just say we want that little sprig of rosemary to stitch on top of the ABC, but you still want the B to stitch on top of the rosemary. So what we can do is we can come to Pattern Rearrange. So I can come here and I can click on the little rosemary and select the rosemary, and I can move it up to stitch order 2. So when I go and select all and see how it looks, now we can see the ABC is actually stitched behind the rosemary, which means it's going to stitch out first, then the rosemary, but the little B is still on top of the rosemary. So this is something that we were able to play with without having to delete something and then bring it back in a different order. We're able to change that order because we can see that order here on our tiles. So something else is if you wanted to, and I get this question so often, so right now this little plus sign, this is going to bring new designs onto our screen. But it's going to add to what we have on the screen. But if we have already stitched this out and we are done with it, or if we don't like any of it, we just want to start over with something different, there's no need to go and delete each little item. It's just extra steps. All you need, and you don't need to have a blank screen in order to add something fresh and new. So it's by itself. All you have to do is come up here to the Manila folder and select this top icon. So it's the little file, the little folder with an arrow coming out of it. So we're going to go and pull something out of that Manila folder. So we come here, and now we can select a whole new design. Let's select this cute little penguin in a dress. So now if you notice, we pull this little penguin up, and there are no other designs around. And even put it back in a small little medium hoop, mainly because this hoop, I took this hoop off. And that's a hoop, that's all it needs, hoop-wise. So the size changed, the time changed, but we didn't need to delete those other 3 designs. By using this method, it eliminated everything we had on the screen and replaced it with something new. So something that is different, because like in the first video with on the sewing side, we kind of compare the 770 plus with the 790 because they are so very similar. One thing the 790 has, which is a really nice feature, is the 790 does have undo and redo. So if you did something, just say if you accidentally deleted design, or if you accidentally moved something and you didn't want to move it, there's a little undo button. So that undo button will allow you to undo what you did, or redo something that you accidentally undid. Well, the 770 Plus does not have that function. So something else we have here on the side is this little color palette. So right now it has a number 7 next to it. So the number 7 is representing how many different changes of thread. This doesn't necessarily mean how many different colors. It means how many different times the thread needs to be changed. But it can represent color changes, how many different colors. So if we click on it, we can see here the different colors. And if we scroll through it, we can see where those colors are actually going to stitch out. So if we wanted to change it and substitute it for something else, we can clearly come here and see, okay, so for color change number, let's see, color change number 6, it's the color of his beak. If you want that beak to be blue, you know, okay, color 6, I'm going to change it to blue. However, you can take it a step further. So if we want this beak to be a different color, we can select it here, which it is. We can come to where the little arrows are, click those little arrows, and right now it's showing the Isocord 40. That's what these designs are digitized in, and this is the thread that we do highly recommend for our Bernina machines. It's a very, very strong, color-fast thread. But we're able to scroll through and to find a different color, either a color that you have in your stash, or just a different color to make it easier to see on our screen, or just a different color just because that's what you want to use. You want to use some shade of orange or some shade of blue. It doesn't have to be the exact shade that you are using. But if you are going to use a specific color and you're going to change it here, you do have the option to tell the machine exactly what Isocord color you're going to use. So what you could do is you could come up here where it says 0 to 9. We can click that, and then you can type in that number. Oh, that doesn't exist. Just say like 132 is a dark pewter. Like that's the color I want to use for whatever reason. So then you can click it. I can then go back. And so now, if I go back even further, Go here. Now the color of his beak is that new color. So you can tell it specifically what color, so when you go and start embroidering and get to that new color in the color sequence, you don't have to guess what you substitute. You can automatically know, okay, that's the color that's selected. Here it is on my multi-spool holder or in front of my machine. Something else that's super cool is, so if you have your design and they're reading it in, say, Madeira thread or Isocord thread or whatever, you can come here, show the little arrows, and here's where it's showing the Isocord color. You could come and then select a different brand. So like a Madeira rayon thread, which we don't recommend, but you have that option. And then you can come up here to the little spools of thread. Up here at the top, you can click it. And now what it's done is it's changed all those colors that were preset in that Isocord thread color. Now it's reading it in a different brand, Madeira rayon, in its colors that are closely matches what the Isocord colors are. So the colors may change in our overall design, like the shade of it may change a little bit because not every brand has all the same colors. So if you're converting from one brand of thread to another, there are colors that are very similar, but some of them are slightly off. So when it does convert it, your colors may change just slightly, but you do have that option. So once you have your design up, you can then come over to your little needle down here. So the next icon is this one. This will bring us to our embroidery side. So here it's prompting us to put our hoop on now. It's telling us it's going to move. So now it moves. So here is basically your final screen. This is the screen in which you'll embroider from. So here it's showing us our new stitch out time, which is 5 minutes. So once you start stitching and you adjust this dial, that time will fluctuate as well. But it's not going to adjust while it's stationary, only when you start stitching. And the next one here is telling us how much, so this is the amount of time for the entire design. This is the amount of time for that specific color. So it's saying it's going to about less than 1 minute. Other icons that we see over here on the screen is this is our basting stitch. So if we click it once, it will do a basting stitch around our entire design. If you stitch it a second time, it will do a basting stitch around the entire hoop. No matter what the hoop you have on is, it will just do it around that particular hoop. And a third time, we'll take the basting stitch away. The basting stitch is great because it will, very first thing it does, because it always puts the basting stitch in the beginning of your design, or beginning of your stitch out. It's great because it will attach your fabric and your stabilizers, because sometimes we work with multiple different stabilizers, multiple layers of stabilizers, but it'll stitch it all together initially so things won't shift around. Something else that's vitally important is if you ever do break a thread, if anything ever happens and you need to go back or even sometimes forward in stitches, you would use this icon here. This is your broken thread icon, the one with the little squiggly, the little S thread and the little X. So if you click on here, you'll end up on 2 different screens. This screen is telling you generally where you're located. Here is telling you exactly what needle what needle penetration you are at. So you can use your knobs to go forward and backwards 1 stitch at a time for our top knob. This one will go forwards or backwards about 60 stitches at a time. So here you can just kind of scroll through and you'll see those numbers increase. So stitch 8, stitch 9, so on and so forth. And then here it'll tell you where you're at in relation to the number of stitch, or the stitch number. So one thing to remember is just say if a machine breaks a thread or runs out of bobbin, it will stop. And if it stops by itself, it's automatically going to come to this screen because it knows something went wrong, something happened, and the customer is going to need to go back or potentially go back a few stitches. So it automatically comes to this screen. Now if you detected an issue, and you stop the machine. So the green light, this is your start stop button. So this is how we can start and this is how we can stop the machine. So if you stop the machine because you detected an issue, it's not going to come to this screen. It's automatically going to come to this screen. So then you will need to come here to be able to, once you fix the issue, whatever it may have been, you'll need to come here and then go back however many stitches you need to go back. So it starts just a little bit before where it actually stops creating stitches. Something else that we typically want on, unless we're working with metallic thread, is this. So this will cut our jump stitches. So this is one of the few icons that by default it has a yellow line around it with the little scissors. So you typically want this on, and like I said, unless you're working with metallic thread. If you're working with metallic thread, you do not want to use your automatic needle cutter. I'm sorry, your automatic thread cutter. So you want that on. The only other icon we see here that we can use currently is this one. And this isn't something that's used that often, but this is our monochromatic color. So our color option. So basically we have our little penguin and she's got 7 different colors. So it's going to stop after each color and prompt us to change to the next color. It will show us where that color is going to be and it will show us what the color is, just like you see here. But let's just say if you get to a point where from this point on, you don't want to change color anymore. You want the last 2 colors to be the same color. So if the last 2 colors are white and cream, and you just want to stitch it all out in cream, then from that point, you can just click this, and what's going to happen is the machine is not going to stop for a color change. When it gets to where that part of the design would have initially been a different color, it's just going to keep on stitching. It will still cut for stop for jump stitches and things like that, but it'll just keep on stitching. So another icon that you don't see or you can't see is this one right here. So I'm going to go and show you what that icon does. Let's see. So let's go and make a copy of this little guy. So I've got 2 of the same designs. So here we have this option available now. So this is color rearrange. So basically what it is, it's 3 spools of thread. There's a red, a green, and a red. And then the line going from the first red spool of thread to the third spool of thread, which is also red. So what this is going to do, if you want, since you have 2 designs that have some of the same colors, if you want, you can have it so it will stitch out all of the same colors that it can all at once. So if I click it, what it's going to do is it's going to stitch out the feet in the first penguin and then the feet in the second penguin. Instead of stitching this penguin from start to finish and then going to this penguin and stitching it from start to finish, it will stitch out what it can at the same time, which is a super awesome function. So if this function is not available, it won't be there. It'll be grayed out, just like we saw previously. So that's pretty much it for the kind of like the run through and the overview of the 770 Plus embroidery side of the machine. It is fully capable of just about anything you possibly need. It's very, very similar to what the 790 is capable of doing, except it has fewer stitches, fewer fonts. It doesn't have the group and ungroup. It also doesn't have endless embroidery, which is something that, to be honest, really isn't even used that much. And it doesn't have the embroidery creative consultant. So the creative consultant, with the little mannequin over here, we were able to use on the sewing side. You can tell it what type of fabric, what type of technique you will be doing, and it will give you information of what you need to do. The 790 will also do that on the embroidery side, where the 770 does not. All right, remember, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as always, happy sewing.